And the chart that he takes up now is that of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna Thakur happened to be the guru of Vivekananda. So we're going to have a great time analyzing this chart too. Let's get started, James.
Okay.
James always uses the Lahiri Anayamsha because that has been a question for many in the question section. So I hope that people are satisfied with the answer. We take up now the chart of Thakur Ramakrishna, as he is known in Bengal, where he was born. We see the ascendant here being that of Aquarius, Sun and Moon, the rulers of the 7th house of Leo and the 6th house of Cancer, respectively, are also present in the ascendant. Venus, which is the 4th ruler of Taurus and 9th ruler of Libra, is present in the 2nd house and is exalted. Rahu, present in Taurus and is present in the 4th house. A retrograde Jupiter finds its presence in Gemini. Jupiter is the ruler of the 2nd and the 11th houses. Saturn, again the ruler of the ascendant and the 12th house, is retrograde in the 9th house. Ketu, very much present in the 10th house, and Mars, which is the ruler of the 3rd house and the 10th house, is present in Capricorn, exalted in the 12th house. I forgot to mention that Mercury, which is the ruler of the 5th house and the 8th house, is also retrograde in the Lagna or the ascendant. So we have 3 retrograde planets here, Mercury, Jupiter and Saturn, and that's an interesting fact. So I hand over the mention to you, James.
Okay, sorry, I was looking at, you know, it's interesting because I use 2 different programs to draw charts, and you have yours. I have 3 different ascendant degrees for Ramakrishna. One computer gives 8 degrees 2 minutes, one gives 10 degrees 44 minutes, and yours is
9 degree 42 minutes.
Yeah, so they're all a teeny bit different. It changes the dasamsha. Anyway, this is a fascinating chart. I do not know much about Ramakrishna, but I think he's famous for his ecstasies, right?
Right.
He has these ecstatic visions. And the first one I was reading was, they think was around the age of 6.
Yes.
And at the age of 6, he was in Jupiter dasha and Venus bhukti. Mm-hmm. And Jupiter is in the 5th house. He was born in Jupiter dasha, and Jupiter is in the 5th house, the house of the mind. And then Venus is in the 2nd house, exalted. And the 2nd house is money and knowledge, but the 2nd house is imagination. So this is not to say that he wasn't seeing them or that it was some fantasy, but it's the imagination. It's the ability to see things. You know, I think that has something to do with the visions that he had. At least that's when it started. Now, what I found particularly interesting is that he is into Advaita, non-duality.
Yes.
Okay? Which not everybody, you know, everybody has different, but he was into Advaita. And this, I believe, is pretty clear from the chart. I mean, the thing is, he's got both. He has prayer and devotion from Jupiter, but he's got a very strong Mercury, which is the mind. Advaita basically is it's not the experience, it's the understanding that the world is illusion. You get there through the negation, neti, not that. You're trying to get to what is real, and all these damn things are fake. That's Mercury. So there's when I'm looking at a horoscope, particularly if the person says they're interested in their evolution, I'd be looking to see, are they devotional, like worshiping Krishna, Hare Krishna, all day long. The Hare Krishnas, they have Jupiter will be with the moon, with the sun, with the ascendant. So Jupiter's devotion. That's the Hare Krishnas, or the devotion. Then you have Saturn, Lord Shiva, which is meditation, introspection. Saturn here in Ramakrishna's chart, Saturn does not aspect the sun, the moon, the ascendant, or the ascendant ruler. So Saturn is not involved. Jupiter aspects the ascendant. Jupiter aspects the sun and the moon. Okay, so devotion is there. But Mercury, Lord Vishnu, Advaita, the mind, Mercury is with the moon, with the sun, in the ascendant, aspected by, I mean, this Mercury doesn't quit. This Mercury is one strong Mercury for spiritual purposes.
But this Jupiter also aspects the ascendant ruler.
Yeah, yes. Jupiter aspects the moon, Jupiter aspects the ascendant, Jupiter aspects the sun, the ascendant ruler. Jupiter is very strong too. But to me, they could be equally as strong, but I would take Mercury to be a little bit stronger. I consider, this is a real subtlety, I could be wrong, but the planet in the first house is always going to be stronger than the aspect to the first house, unless the aspect is much tighter, okay? The ascendant is 8 degrees. Well, the ascendant is 8 degrees. Mercury and Jupiter, they're both 14 and 15. So, but Mercury is conjunct the ascendant, conjunct the moon, conjunct the sun. The Jupiter aspects are aspects. So they are both there. They're both there.
I agree. It's like talking long distance and being with a person on a call and being with a person in person.
100%. That's a great analogy. I'm going to use that. Say that again. It's like being on the phone versus being in person.
Yes.
That's great. So, as I said, to me, what I was looking at first and foremost was the visions, because that's what he's known for.
Yes.
So this is interesting because Jupiter is in the 5th house. Now the 5th house ruler, I consider very strong because the moon, Mercury, the 5th house ruler, is with the moon. So it's, even though the moon rules a bad house, the moon is a great benefic. And having a moon-Mercury conjunction means the person never stops thinking. They're constantly thinking, coming up with ideas. It's the person with the moon-Mercury has a little bit of trouble in life because their ideas are so strong. What I mean by that is when you perceive something, the 2 planets of the mind are Mercury and the moon.
Right.
Okay? Mercury is the son of the moon in the mythology. But so if I'm perceiving something, I perceive it through my Mercury, which is in Libra. I perceive it that way from the mind. And then my moon is in Taurus. So I perceive it also emotionally or through the common sense or the memory. Moon is common sense and memory part of the mind. Mercury's intellect part. So most people have Mercury and moon in different signs, and they experience all of life through their feelings and through their intellect. But when you have moon conjunct Mercury, they're both in the same sign in his. So anything he perceives, his feelings experience it the same as his mind.
So it's all unidirectional.
Yeah.
It's all unidirectional.
Exactly. It's very unidirected. Yeah. Now, the fact that he's got moon Mercury is the mind is going wild in life with ideas and the emotional impact with the ideas. In the Kabbalah, they talk about the ability to create something, and they use the 7 days of creation as the example. On the first day, God did this. On the 6th day, he did that. They take that to be how to create something. God created existence. We want to create, I want to create a happy marriage. So the Kabbalah teaches you to go through these 7 steps. The main part of the creation of something is to sit in meditation, and if it's a happy marriage you want, you envision the happy marriage is there. You don't say, I hope I get a happy marriage. In the future, I'll get a happy. No, you sit and you say, I've got a happy marriage. Oh my God, I found the perfect mate. and you imbibe, that's a thought, but you imbibe it with feeling. So you go, you do this meditation, you go, or let's say you want $1 million. You see yourself going, I have my $1 million. Oh my God, I have my $1 million. And you let the feeling imbibe the thought. And after you do that for a few minutes, you stop and you just rest. Okay? So with a man who's having visions, he has these ideas of Krishna, he has these ideas of this ecstasy, and then the emotions support it, which helps to have the vision manifest. But I believe it's also created by Jupiter in the 5th house, the house of the mind. Now, when I went on Wikipedia, there's all this analysis as to whether Ramakrishna was crazy, was he have epilepsy, did he have this, because they can't imagine how somebody could see these visions, right? I believe it's the moon Mercury. I believe it's the Venus exalted in the house of the imagination. And I believe it's Jupiter in the house of the mind, but a very specific oddity. Jupiter's in Gemini. Jupiter does not like Gemini. Gemini is the opposite sign of Sagittarius. So I've noticed that if Jupiter's in Gemini, Jupiter's in Virgo, it doesn't function so well. And it took me years. I'm embarrassed to say how long it took me. When I was doing astrology, if I saw Jupiter conjunct Mercury, I thought, this is fantastic, 2 benefics conjunct. And I kept finding people when it was closely conjunct, they couldn't keep a tune because Jupiter would expand the nerves. Jupiter would expand the nervous system and they'd be nervous. Anyway, I think that Jupiter in Gemini in the house of the mind has something to do with the mind functioning differently from the norm. Now,
and here the Jupiter is retrograde, so it definitely...
I prefer it retrograde. If you have a planet causing damage in some house, fallen, bad sign, afflicted, I prefer it be retrograde. It doesn't have so much impact.
It restricts.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have it, but you have to be very careful in how you verbalize it because people love to take it as a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that a retrograde. It just makes it passive. So it makes it so now the damage is passive, and if it's exalted but retrograde, the good effects are a little bit more passive. That's how I see it. So okay, so that's that. Now the fame that is in this chart, a lot of it comes from the 1st house more than the 10th house, in my opinion. The 10th house is strong because the 10th ruler is exalted. It's in the 12th house. So the career is connected to Ketu in the 10th and the 10th ruler in the 12th, moksha. So there's nothing materialistic about this career. This career is like an arrow to the target. It's a spiritual career. But the fame is more connected to the 1st house, in my opinion, because you've got Sun, Moon, Mercury in the 1st, aspected by Jupiter, okay? And then you have the ascendant ruler, Saturn, exalted in the 9th, the house of religion, philosophy, higher knowledge. Saturn's retrograde, so he wouldn't care about fame because he just wouldn't care so much.
It was immaterial for him. It was immaterial.
Exactly. But that second house is very, very important to understand because he's either going to be very wealthy from an exalted Venus in the 2nd, or he's going to have a great imagination and knowledge, and he may speak very well and very nicely and things like that.
Can I just say one thing here, James?
Yeah, please.
He is supposed to have had students, disciples who were so rich and from all sort of, all forms of strata. Yeah. You know what? But he would not touch money. He would not touch money at all.
But the reason that he had them was because of the Venus in the second exalted.
You know what? Once Vivekananda put a coin under his seat before he came and sat. And when he sat there, he actually jumped up as if there was a fire beneath him.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
So and he said that there's somebody who has kept wealth beneath me. He had all the comforts. And it is a known fact that just he had told Sharadama, the lady whom he was married to, though they did not live like a normal couple,
Right.
but he told Sharadama that I would stop eating 3 days before I die.
Wow.
So, as you said, he had enough. He just you have to have a desire to be alive on this planet. So
Yes.
he used to crave a lot for food. And Sharadama once told him that you are such a big saint. Why do you crave for food? And that was his answer when he said that this craving is the reason which binds me to this planet. The day I decide to leave my body, that day on, for 3 days, I will have nothing to eat and my desires will die. So I will leave the body.
And
So
when
as
it
you
comes,
said, the second house was his craving for good food, his craving. As you said, the second house would be very important and very prominent.
and I take the appetite to be from the sixth house and the food you eat from the second. So the food he eats would be sweet and they would be good foods because it's exalted. And the appetite could be strong from the sixth house moon being with Mercury. Also, if you use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, Uranus is in the same degree as the ascendant.
Okay.
So this means total independence, total freedom, no concern for rules and regulations and rituals, complete independence, complete freedom, and doing things outside the box, outside the norm. But the Mars in the 12th house being exalted would give a lot of enlightenment. And Mars is in the 23rd degree of Capricorn. So it's very close to its highest exaltation in the 28th degree. Also, when the third house ruler is connected to the 12th house, the person is psychic. Now, this is odd. I saw it in my first marriage. My wife had, I don't know, ruler of 12th in the third, okay? The third house has something to do with the personality. It's a subtlety. But when you see there are 3 and 12 connected, they're usually psychic. And I used to, occasionally I would say something like, guess how many blah, blah, blahs happened? And she'd go 322. And my jaw would drop. I said, what? Where's she getting this from? It was like that. So if you see a connection between the third and the 12th, look for their psychic ability. Sometimes it's very strong. Now, the fame is also coming from the first house ruler aspected within 1 degree by Jupiter. Right. So the ruler of a house is the basis. It's the foundation. The planets in the house are, the planets in the house have to do with what's going on. So in other words, if you take somebody's home, they might have a big mansion with lots of gold chandeliers and everything wonderful. But if the basis is bad, if there's termites or leaking, or mold underneath the foundation, it's very bad. But in this case, he has both the planets in the first house, all the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, and he has the ascendant ruler being very, very, very strong because of that aspect. Now, also, you have to understand, the most personal planets in the horoscope, Sun, Moon, Mercury, are in the first house. So his attention from early on had to have been on himself and his own experience. That also may have had to do with his ecstasy, because he wasn't geared outward. He wasn't geared to other people, at least from the psychology that he was born with. It was all about his own experience. So very quickly, he's focusing on his own experience, sun, moon, Mercury, sun, moon, Mercury. And so it's all about him and his experience. And if his experience is spiritual, then it's,
it's
that's how.
Yes, his, as you said, because it's spiritual, it's much more fulfilling. Again, it leads him to the path further because he does not desire or want anything else then.
Yeah, it's a fascinating chart. And he got married in the Sun Bhukti. The Sun rules his 7th house. He got married, I think, 1859. It was the Sun Bhukti. He had cancer in the Ketu dasha. He died of cancer in the Ketu dasha. He was in Ketu Venus. Venus rules the throat. He had throat cancer. I wouldn't expect Venus to cause problems, but he had the cancer. And again, well, Ketu is supposed to be well placed in Scorpio. I don't know. I mean, really, the only thing Parashara said is Rahu's exalted in Taurus. I don't think he even said anything about Ketu.
May I put in a word here, James?
Sure. I don't know much about Ramakrishna, to be honest.
But you've explained so beautifully, so much, so beautifully. He had this, because he was so much, he worshipped what we call Kali. And he worshipped her as mother. And she was the all-enlightening force in his life. So as a mother would do anything to remove the obstacles in a child's path, when he contracted this cancer of the throat, he was asked by one of his students, I think it's Vivekananda, that you have the ability, you have such a direct approach to Ma, as we call Kali in Bengal. So he said, you have such a direct approach to Ma. Why do you not ask her to remove this cancer? He said, she will do it. The moment I ask her, she would do it. But then again, this is happening because of certain karmas. I have to come back again to suffer certain karmas, and I really don't want to do that. So it's to be over and out with it.
I would not know that Cancer would be here. Cancer in a horoscope usually comes from Ketu, but you'll usually see planets next to Ketu. Planets aspected by Ketu, they have troubles. Those planets, they can have troubles by being near Ketu. Okay, Neptune as well.
But here Ketu aspects Venus, which is again the 4th lord of,
That's the throat. That's the throat. So it may be that the Ketu aspect there on that Venus. But usually what I see is, in other words, you cannot predict. If you take 10 charts and Ketu's aspecting a planet, and you predict Cancer on that planet, I don't think you'll be accurate. You'll be accurate a couple times. But if you see planets close to Ketu, and they run a dasha bhukti of the planet next to Ketu, then you can start to get a little more accurate. But it's very specific. It's not like every planet next to Ketu. There has to be some negative stuff going on for that to happen. It's not, people get, with astrology, they overdo it. In my first book, I wrote what I was taught, that the Marakas cause death. But I explained, the Maraka dashas and muktis, they occur all the time. A Maraka is a planet that rules the 2nd house, rules the 7th house, a planet in the 2nd house, a planet a planet in the 7th house. You get Marakas all the time. So after I wrote my first book, I kept getting phone calls. I think I'm going to die. I have a planet. It was terrible. No, really, it was so bad that I thought if I could write this, I would take it out. I try to explain in my books and speaking that when the time comes for death, you'll have 25 or 35 periods of Marakas in your life. When the time comes for death, the Maraka may be involved.
Right. And here, I'll take an opportunity to ask you a few questions on retrograde today, James, because your book, your second book, or the book that you said you've written after 20 years of experience, has a very beautiful chapter, chapter 3. And I've read it many a times, which is your dialogue between you and Martin about about retrograde planets, and what happens if the retrograde planet of every particular house is sorry, what happens if the ruler of a particular house is retrograde. So here we have 3 planets.
That's
Great,
the book.
the art and practice of ancient Indian astrology.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so the fact that we have 3 retrograde planets
ruling 6 houses makes it a very interesting case.
So the first thing that Padya, it could have been Santanam, but it was probably Padya. Padya is still alive. Padya, I was so lucky. Do you know that when I found Padya was because I called an astrologer. I called Ghansham Joshi, who is famous, and I said, I want to, come to you and have a reading. I'm a Western astrologer. I got to the room, there were 7 or 8 astrologers. He said, I called all the local astrologers to meet you. There were 8 astrologers in the room, and after about 5 minutes, Padya took my chart. He took my chart and he starts reading it. And he says, you got married at 21 or 23. And I said, that's the guy I want to teach. I was very, very, very lucky. Anyway, Padya's in Bombay. And Padya said, okay, so we were doing somebody's chart, and he said, this person's going to be very critical. He didn't mean critical. He didn't mean critical like criticizing others. He didn't mean that. He meant analytical. In other words, if you have retrograde planets, you're not going forward. Instead, you're held back a little bit. You're more contemplative, contemplating, analyzing. So the first thing is the person is analyzing a lot. Okay?
Okay.
And which also may be connected to his visions. He's very, this chart is all about the mind. Moon Mercury in the 1st, Jupiter in the 5th. It's all about the mind. Everything is like that. But
Mercury, incidentally, is Digbal also in the 1st house.
Yeah. So, so that's first of all. Second of all those houses become more passive. And the thing is, it really doesn't matter that they're passive. No matter how strong they might be, the only kind of career here is spiritual, because Ketu in the 10th and the 10th ruler in the 12th, this was going to be a spiritual career no matter what, even if those other planets were moving forward. But so having the 5th house ruler retrograde, even though Jupiter's there, he doesn't have to have children because the ruler's retrograde. Jupiter in the 5th is good. It makes a person want to invest and speculate. But the 5th ruler is retrograde. It doesn't mean that he won't. It just means that it's a choice. It's his choice as to whether he wants to have children, whether he wants to invest and speculate, whether he wants to, whatever.
So you mean to say that retrograde planets give us a choice? Instead of being very definitive, they give us a choice to
100%. 100%. You absolutely, when you are doing a chart, and the 5th house ruler is retrograde, you could have Venus in the 5th, you could have Jupiter aspecting the 5th. You must say to that person, if you have children, let's say it's Venus, if you have children, there'll be an artist, Venus. Mars in the 5th, if you have children, the child would be aggressive and like sports. But I cannot predict that you will have children. Because I don't care if Jupiter's there, Venus is there, Moon is there, I don't care. I cannot predict that you will have children because the ruler is retrograde. It is your choice. And some will say, I want them, and some will say, I don't. Same with the 7th house. The ruler is retrograde. It's more of a choice as to whether you want to get married. And on top of this, if there's not a lot of aspects, good, strong aspects to the 7th house or the 7th house ruler, and Jupiter is retrograde, So let's say there's not a lot of energy for marriage and the ruler is retrograde, then you must say to them, do not, if you want to get married, do not wait for bells to go off. In other words, most people are waiting. Like when I saw my second wife for the first time, we were doing astrology. I was in a spiritual community. They said, "Well, you teach astrology." I said, "If people want to learn, they should come to my house." She walked in the door, and I almost fell off my seat. She was so beautiful. I couldn't believe it. And if a person has a retrograde 7th house ruler and they wait for that to happen,
they can wait forever.
Happen.
They can wait forever.
No, not they can wait forever. They will wait forever. If there's good planets in the 7th house or aspecting, then yes, that might happen to some extent. But if there's no strength there and it's retrograde, they can get married, but they have to make it happen. Okay, it will not.
Passive energy, as you said, it's a passive energy.
But even if there's a good Jupiter or Moon there, it's a choice. They will. When I say it's a choice, what I mean is, in their experience, it's a choice. Same with children. Same with, like, I'll see a chart for fame from the 10th house, but the first ruler is retrograde. They may want fame, they may not. It's a choice. So that is very, very, you can take that to the bank. You can use that with your clients. Just make sure that you know whether the house is strong or medium or weak otherwise. And then the ruler.
So if they have this retrograde, say, as you said, the 10th ruler is retrograde, and it's their choice to want name or fame or not. And supposing they do want it, will they get it through the hard work? They have to work hard, depending on their 6th and the 10th house again. Is it?
It depends on whether the horoscope has enough energy for fame.
Right.
If the horoscope has a very strong first house, so they walk in the room, everybody notices them. If they have that, even though the 10th ruler is retrograde, they can have fame. Or if they have strong planets in the 10th house and the ruler is retrograde, they can have fame. But it's a little bit more of a choice, and they have to push a little bit because the ruler is not going to push for them.
Yeah, so it's more of a internalized energy from what I have been working on. It's more of an internalized energy.
Right.
And that requires somebody, either the self-conscious or some other person, to give it a great go, to, put it into practice.
But
put it into a projectile.
It's a very conscious choice. Like, if you do a chart for someone who is, 30 years old, they may have the best chart for the arts, but the ruler is retrograde. Now, in astrology, based on Western astrology, the Saturn return occurs. Saturn takes 29 years to go through the houses. So for the first 29 years, you are simply going by your instinct. Oh, that woman's pretty, I'll marry her. It's instinct. Okay. Oh, I like health and healing. I'll go into health and healing. But when they get to 29, between 29 and 31 and a half, when Saturn comes back to itself, that's when childhood is over. That's when they become serious and committed. Now, you'll find this a lot. A person has a really strong, let's say, 3rd house for the arts, but the ruler is retrograde. For the first 29 years, they know they have talent. They enjoy the talent, but they don't think of it seriously, so they do some other career. Then when they get to 29 or 30 and they start thinking, wait a minute, what do I really want? Then they realize that is a possibility. In other words, so many times I'll see a person has a chart really good for health and healing, but the ruler is retrograde. They don't even know it's a potential career. They don't know it. They know they enjoy it, but they don't. So then I'll tell them, look, after the age of 30, 35, look, your chart is really strong for health and healing. But because the planet is retrograde, they don't think of it seriously.
So it's more of intuitive energy present there, which is not being harnessed or consciously brought into the forefront.
Right. Now, sometimes they do, but in the first 30 years, you're just going by what do I like? What do I like? This is why I really go crazy with parents that stop their kids. The kid wants to do something that doesn't make money, so they stop them. Or they think they should be this, or they think they should be that. This is the worst thing you can do. This is anti-dharmic. It's against the Dharma. You let the person follow what they love. Get the karma out of their system. Let them follow what they love. Because when they get to the age of seriousness, they have to have
The
gone
experience.
through in order to choose wisely, they have to go through what they love. Nature set it up this way, and parents get in the way. Oh, I'll stop them from what they love. Oh, this is wonderful. So then they wind up in a career they don't like, they're not happy, they don't even know that they could have done.
Right. And okay, so as of let's dabble a little more in one specific retrograde planet, Mercury. What do you have to say about retrograde Mercury?
They tend to be more intuitive. They tend to be more psychic or intuitive because because the Mercury is kind of internal. But I don't, that's the only real thing that I've noticed is that they're a little psychic, a little intuitive. I haven't noticed much else.
In
That's
my
different
readings, in my readings, I did see that they did not go with the normal norms of learning and understanding. Their norms of understanding was different from what the others did.
100%. 100%. It comes from inside. They learn it intuitively somehow. You don't know how they learn it, but
And
they
they
learn
make
it.
their own. They make their own way of learning. You know, they create their own way of learning because they're
Yeah,
not the normal way is not their way, as you just
right.
said that it's intuitive.
Well, the thing is also, schools teach. There's many different ways to teach someone. Okay, I did very poorly in school. My method is visual. It's not auditory. You could talk as much as you want, unless it's one-on-one talking. But there's different ways. There's several different ways of learning, and in schools, I don't know about now, but when I went to school, there was one method, and you either were lucky enough to have that method or you didn't. But the Mercury is definitely intuitive. They learn on their own somehow.
Okay, so James, it's been a pleasure, and it's been a very beautiful experience having you on board, teaching us the nuances of seeing things just from the Rasi chart and pinpointing so many things. We're not going to leave you here for today's session. We're going to definitely leave you here, but in further sessions, we're definitely going to invite you so that we can benefit from your experience.
Right,
Thank you.
and let me just say that it's not so much that I'm teaching you. I am providing what I learned. You need to take what I learned, what I'm saying. You need to take that, and if it works, you use it, and if it doesn't, you don't. I did that with all my teachers. So it's not, you're never going to find one great teacher. There's going to be teachers that know a little bit of this, other teachers know that. So I'm just telling you what I learned, and if it works for you, you use it. If it doesn't work, please do not go around saying, James Braha said this, so it must be true, unless it works. What I'm telling you works for me, but if it doesn't work for you, you don't use it.
So it's the Saturn moon, the questioning ability in James speaking that for you. And on a
I don't have Saturn. I don't have Saturn moon. I guess it's the intense Saturn that I have.
okay.
But that's true though. I mean, you could say that I have a very, very strong Saturn, particularly with spiritual matters. My Saturn aspects Jupiter, so anything spiritual, I'm always doubting, so I can find what's real.
Okay. So on a very, very light note, we'll leave you here, James, to just have you back again with us. Till the time we all meet again, Have a good day, stay safe, and be good. Thank you.